Be me. Lena, 29, architect. Got my degree, did my time in the trenches at a big firm, spent years watching guys in dusty boots get all the credit, sat through meetings where my ideas were explained back to me by a man named Chad, had enough of the boys' club atmosphere, the condescending pats on the back, the assumption that I was there to take notes and get coffee. A fire started burning in my gut. Decided I wasn't just going to break the glass ceiling, I was going to build a whole new house without one. My big idea, a construction and architecture firm run entirely by women, for everyone. Athena Builders, I called it. A name that was supposed to scream intelligence, strategy, and strength. It felt revolutionary. It felt right. First person I called was Maya. Maya, the best structural engineer I knew from my old job. A genuine genius with numbers, could calculate load-bearing capacities in her sleep. Her only weakness was a complete lack of confidence. She'd second-guess everything, panic under pressure. I pitched her the idea over coffee. I told her about our chance to build something new, a place where our skills would be the only thing that mattered. She was hesitant, said that it was a huge risk, that the industry was brutal. But I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. I pushed. I told her she'd be my partner, my right hand, no more being overlooked. She finally agreed, a nervous smile on her face. Next, I found Iris, an interior designer with an incredible portfolio, all vibrant colors and daring concepts. She was the opposite of Maya, all emotion, passion, and artistic temperament. I knew she would give our projects the soul they needed. Met her at a design expo, and she was immediately hooked on the concept of Athena Builders. She said she was tired of contractors telling her that her ideas were too complicated or not practical. She envisioned a collaborative environment where design and construction worked in harmony. The three of us were the foundation: the architect, the engineer, and the designer. A perfect trio. We pooled our savings, took out a business loan, and leased a small, bright office space. Spent weeks painting the walls, assembling minimalist furniture, and setting up our workstations. The energy was electric. We were filled with so much optimism. We designed a sleek logo, built a professional website, and started networking. Our unique selling point, the all-woman team, was a massive hit, especially with progressive, affluent clients. A local lifestyle blog wrote a feature on us. The Women Building the Future. My face was on the cover of the article, a confident smile plastered on. I felt like I was on top of the world. The phone started ringing. Our first few projects were small scale, but we poured our hearts into them. A kitchen renovation for a family, a boutique retail space, a modern bathroom overhaul. We were meticulous. Every detail was perfect. Iris would create these beautiful, functional designs. Maya would ensure every structure was sound and up to code, triple-checking every number. I would manage the client, the timeline, and the overall vision. We hired a small crew of women for the physical labor: plumbers, electricians, carpenters. It was tough finding them, but we did. They were all enthusiastic about the mission. The clients were ecstatic. They loved the communication, the attention to detail, the lack of gruff, intimidating workers in their homes. They said we brought a different kind of energy to the job site. We were finishing projects on time, on budget. Our reputation started to grow. I remember thinking, this is it. We've proven them all wrong. My idealism felt validated. A few months into our success, the big one landed in our lap. A wealthy tech couple wanted to build their dream home from the ground up on a scenic hillside plot. Modern, minimalist design. Lots of glass, clean lines, and complex engineering. A huge budget. This was the project that would put Athena Builders on the map. The clients specifically said they chose us because they loved our mission and wanted to support a female-led business. We celebrated that night. It felt like the culmination of everything we'd worked for. I should have seen the warning signs. I was too blinded by ambition. The project started well enough. The groundbreaking ceremony was another great PR opportunity. More positive press. I was confident, maybe a little arrogant. But the scale of this project was unlike anything we had handled before. The pressure began to mount almost immediately. The clients were demanding, constantly emailing and calling with small changes that had huge ripple effects on the plans. Iris, who thrived on creative freedom, started to get frazzled by the constant revisions. She complained that her artistic vision was being compromised, that the clients were treating her like a pixel pusher instead of a designer. Her mood swings started to affect the office atmosphere. One day she'd be buzzing with ideas, the next she'd be sighing dramatically over her monitor. The real problems began with the foundation. The hillside location was tricky. Maya's initial geotechnical survey seemed fine, but she was visibly stressed. She was working late every night, her desk covered in printouts and calculations. I tried to be a supportive boss, told her to take a break, that we trusted her. She just nodded, looking haunted. Then the first major delay happened. A shipment of specialized steel beams was late. Not our fault, but it threw our meticulously planned schedule into chaos. The crew we'd hired, the same women who were so enthusiastic on the smaller jobs, started to struggle. A custom home build is a marathon of intense physical labor, not a sprint. One of our best carpenters had to leave. She told me she loved the work, but the constant heavy lifting was aggravating an old back injury. A few weeks later, our lead electrician announced she was pregnant and had to go on light duty, which on a construction site is almost impossible. We were happy for her, but it left a huge hole in our team. The complaints started to bubble up more frequently. I'd overhear hushed conversations about the long hours, the grueling work. I called a team meeting, tried to rally the troops with a speech about our mission, about how we were pioneers. It felt hollow, even to me. They didn't need a speech. They needed the work to be less physically punishing, and it wasn't. The dominoes started to fall faster. Maya came into my office one morning, looking like she hadn't slept in a week. She told me she'd found an error in her own calculations for the main structural support of the open-plan living area. It wasn't a catastrophic error, but it meant a section of the framing had to be torn down and redone to meet seismic safety standards. The cost of the mistake, both in time and materials, was staggering. Maya was on the verge of tears, saying she was in over her head, that the pressure was too much. I tried to reassure her, telling her that mistakes happen, but inside, a cold dread was settling in my stomach. My right hand was crumbling. Iris was next to unravel. The constant client changes had pushed her to her breaking point. She missed a deadline for the final interior finishing selections. This meant the orders for custom cabinetry, flooring, and tiles were all delayed. A delay in one area created a bottleneck for 3 other teams. The painters couldn't paint, the tilers couldn't tile. I confronted her about it, and she just broke down, sobbing that she was completely burned out and that no one appreciated how much creative energy this took. The supportive, collaborative atmosphere of our office had evaporated. Now it was just thick with tension, anxiety, and quiet resentment. I was running around all day, trying to patch up logistical holes, soothe egos, and manage an increasingly unhappy client. I wasn't an architect anymore. I was a crisis manager. The project was now months behind schedule and wildly over budget. The client's initial enthusiasm had curdled into frustration, then outright anger. They were CCing their lawyers on emails. The investors who had funded Athena Builders, who had loved the PR angle, were now demanding weekly progress reports and audits. The positive blog articles felt like a cruel joke. My dream was turning into a waking nightmare. My women can do it all philosophy was being crushed under the weight of a simple, undeniable fact. Our team was too inexperienced for a project this massive, and my ideology couldn't magically make up for that deficit. We were failing. The breaking point came during a conference call with the investors. It was brutal. A disembodied voice on the speakerphone coldly listed our failures: missed deadlines, budget overruns, a potential lawsuit from the client. He said they had lost faith in my ability to manage the project. He gave me an ultimatum: get the house finished in 60 days, or they would pull all funding, dissolve the company, and take legal action to recoup their losses. 60 days. It was an impossible deadline. After the call, I just sat in my office, in the dark, for what felt like hours. Maya and Iris had already gone home, neither of them able to look me in the eye. I was alone. The weight of my ambition was suffocating me. I had to admit the truth. My team, my hand-picked group of pioneers, couldn't do this. My entire founding principle was a failure. Swallowing the bitter pill of my pride, I knew I had only one option left. I had to call in a man. I remembered a name an old mentor had mentioned once: Robert, a contractor of the old school, a guy who had been building houses since before I was born. He had a reputation for being difficult, gruff, and intolerant of nonsense, but also for being the best damn builder in the state. He was a fixer. I found his company's number online. It felt like a surrender. I called him the next morning. His voice was exactly as I'd imagined, gravelly and impatient. I explained the situation, trying to sound professional and in control, but my voice wavered. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He finally said he'd come by the site that afternoon to take a look. Robert arrived in a beat-up Ford truck, the kind that has never seen a car wash. He was in his 50s, with a weathered face, calloused hands, and a level gaze that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed corporate facade. I walked him through the half-finished shell of the house. He didn't say much, just grunted occasionally, running his hand over a crookedly set window frame or tapping a support beam with his knuckles. I pointed out the plans, trying to explain our vision. He seemed completely uninterested. After an hour of silent inspection, he stood in the middle of the chaotic site, folded his arms, and looked at me. He told me bluntly that the whole project was a mess. He said the foundation drainage was inadequate, the framing in the west wing was not square, and the workflow was a logistical nightmare. He listed a dozen problems I didn't even know we had. He didn't say anything about my all-female team. He didn't have to. The disastrous results spoke for themselves. He just talked about the work. He laid out his terms. He told me if I wanted his help, he would take over all on-site operations, full control. His word would be law. My role and Maya's would be purely advisory. He would bring in his own crew, men he'd worked with for decades, and his price was, to put it mildly, exorbitant. It would eat up the last of our contingency funds and then some. I had no choice. It was either this or total ruin. I shook his rough, dusty hand. I said yes. I felt a strange mix of profound humiliation and a sliver of relief. The burden was no longer solely on my shoulders. The next day, Robert's crew arrived. It was like watching a different species of human being. 4 guys, all around Robert's age, moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency. There was no chatter, no drama, no complaints, just the rhythmic sounds of saws, hammers, and calm, direct instructions. They systematically started undoing and redoing our mistakes. Robert was there from dawn until dusk, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a set of our blueprints, now covered in his own pencil marks, in the other. He didn't yell, but his disappointment was palpable. He'd occasionally call me or Maya over to show us a problem, explaining the right way to do it in a few short, clear sentences. It wasn't condescending. It was just factual, which somehow made it worse. The culture clash was immediate and painful. Maya was in awe of their technical skill and deeply embarrassed by the errors they uncovered. She mostly stayed in the site office, avoiding them. Iris tried to discuss a design element with Robert once. He listened, nodded, and then told her that her idea was impractical and would leak in 5 years. She retreated back to our main office and didn't visit the site again. My pioneering female crew was officially let go. There was no work for them. Some were relieved. It was an awkward, sad meeting where I thanked them for their effort, knowing full well I had led them into a situation they weren't equipped to handle. I was a ghost in my own company, a figurehead on a project that was no longer mine. I watched Robert's team work. I watched them lift impossibly heavy drywall sheets with ease, frame complex roof lines with a kind of unspoken communication, and solve problems on the fly that would have sent my team into a week-long panic. It wasn't about gender. I finally understood that. It was about decades of experience. It was about knowledge passed down through years of hard labor, something my idealistic business plan had completely ignored. My belief in the inherent superiority of a woman's touch in construction felt like a childish fantasy. Against all odds, Robert's team clawed the project back from the brink. They worked relentlessly, with a discipline I had never been able to instill. They met the 60-day deadline. Barely. The house was finished. And it was beautiful. The craftsmanship was impeccable. The clients were satisfied with the final product, though they made it clear they would never work with us again. The investors were placated. They got their building, but they informed me they would be divesting from Athena Builders as soon as legally possible. We had been saved from a lawsuit, but the company was mortally wounded. The aftermath was quiet and devastating. The financial report came in. After paying Robert and his crew and covering the massive cost overruns from our mistakes, Athena Builders was deep in the red. We were bankrupt in all but name. There was nothing left to salvage. Maya was the first to leave. She took a job at the large traditional firm we had once railed against. She told me, in a sad and final conversation, that she needed the structure and security, that she wasn't cut out for the stress of leadership. I couldn't blame her. Iris decided to go freelance, working on small-scale design projects from home. She said she wanted to get back to the art, not the business. We wished each other well, but we both knew our shared dream was over. I spent the last week in our once bright office, now just a dim, dusty room, packing a few personal items into a cardboard box. The awards for innovative startup and the framed blog article were stacked by the trash can. The phones were silent. The electric energy was long gone. My great experiment had failed. My crusade to prove that a team of women could do it better had resulted in a spectacular flameout. I had been so focused on the who, I had forgotten the what and the how. Competence, experience, and resilience weren't gendered traits. They were earned. As I was leaving, I saw Robert's truck parked across the street. He was talking with one of his guys, sharing a laugh. He nodded at me. Not with pity, not with scorn. Just a simple, neutral acknowledgement. I nodded back. I had set out to build a new kind of house, and in the end, I learned a very old lesson. Be me, 29, architect, founder of a failed company. Thought ideology could replace experience. It couldn't. My dream of an all-female construction empire was built on a faulty foundation.